In my darkest hole, you'd be well advised not to plan my funeral, for the body dies. Those are the wise words of Jerry Cantrell and Lane Staley in the Alice in Chains 1995. I think that's when it came out, the song Grind from their self-titled album. What does that have to do with Michigan and Bryce Underwood? Let's get down to the latest. Michigan ain't anywhere close to dead yet. Planning any funeral would be ill-advised. We'll talk about it in this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. I'm glad we had a mailbag yesterday, so I couldn't delve into the drama that was unfolding surrounding Bryce Underwood, which seemed to reach a fever pitch in the aftermath as he posts and then deletes something from his Instagram story. You're dealing with a teenager, folks. That should be sign number one. But some have taken it and rolled with it to say that means that the dream is dead. It is over. And so many are also inclined to want to hold the funeral. But nonetheless, now, everything that I'm going to be saying here, again, we're going to be having, we're speaking in platitudes. We can't get very specific. If you don't understand why after what happened on Thursday, then you'll understand eventually whether things work out for Michigan or things don't work out for Michigan. I can't tell you which way it's going to go. Still, we'll be able to kind of give you a little bit more of a understanding with a lot more detail and nuance as far as the Bryce Underwood situation is concerned. That said, credit to Josh Henschke, who posted that his sources, and I know who his sources were, and these are the people that I would trust, that Underwood was essentially trolling at that point. There's been a lot of blame shifted towards E.J. Holland for putting out the $10.5 million number, and the Underwoods reportedly, and I can essentially confirm, not happy with that. However, it's I think the anger placed towards EJ is misplaced after digging in a little bit deeper. Do I think that Michigan is in a bad spot or that it's taken a hit? This time yesterday, I would have said yes, based off of early conversations I had as intel gathering had started. However, I went to bed feeling like the numbers in favor of Michigan have actually increased, not decreased. Okay? So I've been giving you 51-49 LSU. Those numbers aren't my own. None of the numbers I've given you have been my own. That said, I think it's kind of more, this is my own number. I'm going to say 60-40 Michigan at this point. And I know that's a lot of you are going to tune out because a lot of you are essentially emotionally trying to navigate these waters here, okay? You want to sit there and say he's not coming, he was never coming. Well, that's just ignorance, so to speak. I'm not saying he is coming, right? 60-40 Michigan is, if that number that I'm saying right now, if that ends up holding true, that he still has a very good chance of ending up at LSU. Part of it is I understand kind of what's going on behind the scenes. Now, I will say, I say that number also while admitting Bryce Underwood wants to play for LSU. He does. That's where he's always wanted to play. But there are other things that go on in a recruitment, and that's the whole kind of point of a recruitment. There's a reason why Michigan has had so many guys who have said, yeah, Michigan's my dream school, only for them to end up elsewhere because there's more things that go into trying to convince someone to come. And money is certainly a part of it with all of this, but it's not the only part. But there's a lot more that goes into it because otherwise those kids that would sit there and tell, I've had plenty of them tell me on the record, I dreamed of putting on the winged helmet and being a Michigan player. Let me ask you this. Does Damani Jackson play for Michigan? No, he does not. Grew up with Michigan being his dream school, went to USC, had an opportunity to transfer to Michigan and ends up at Alabama. Just because it's your dream school, just because it's where you want to play doesn't mean it's the only path, right? And that said, again, the dream school could still win out. I just feel like the chances are dwindling. As we get past the LSU visit, I haven't heard anything coming out, near the Underwood camp that suggests that LSU closed the deal, slam dunk, whatever. So there's that. That's one part. Part number two, regardless of what's being said in social media, on message boards or anything like that, the Michigan and the Underwoods, they're still communicating from what I hear from multiple sources, and that there's never been anything close to a no. There's never been anything like, hey, listen, we're thanks, but no thanks. Bryce could shut things down right now and say it's LSU. And yesterday, it kind of started to look like that, except for one word, likely, in his post. I was actually communicating when he posted that. I was communicating with one of my two best sources in this. And they were initially confused and they glommed onto the word likely. And then I got a call from the other source, and the other source says, not concerned at all. And they shared why and all of this. And it made you kind of look at it and say, oh, okay. But Michigan's in a really good place. What I would say is that I don't know that there's going to be any public indication or anything, but get through the weekend without any kind of reaffirmation of commitment to LSU. Get to Monday. Get through, not just two, but through. And Michigan's going to be sitting in a really, really good spot. The more that I'm learning about this scenario, as everyone kind of works their way through it, the paces that have to be gone through, the more that I feel like Michigan is actually kind of sitting pretty in a lot of ways. Okay. So I know that I'm not really telling you a lot. Again, I have to protect the information that has been given to me. I've given you a lot of clues. I will say Michigan has done a really good job of introducing him to people that he needs to be introduced to help make that, to help facilitate the recruiting process and to help facilitate his decision making. I think that they've got a really good plan in place based off of what I've heard. And I think that they're in a much better spot than is being they're giving credit for. So if you're reading into any sources say that Bryce Underwood is planning on staying at LSU, I can tell you with a very strong sense of certainty that they don't have good sources then, or they're just trying to get the sources are trying to get the media off their backs, which is also a possibility. But I think Michigan's in good standing, and that's the best, unfortunately, that I can say at this moment. And we will get deeper into it in the coming weeks. But for now, hopefully we can move off of it for a little while things kind of happen. Because, again, I want to remind you that just, if he does not come, that's one of the outcomes that could happen. But it does not mean that, he was never coming, he was never entertaining it, blah, blah, blah. That does not mean that that's the case. It's not that black and white. There's a shade of gray. And again, we'll get into the details of a lot of that stuff in the coming weeks once we are essentially given the green light to share more intel on all of this. But also, again, recruiting is not a situation where there's one school. I just have to always give this reminder. It's not a situation where there's one school and it's the job of the media and the fans to decipher the puzzle, kind of pull out the pieces, get to understand exactly what it is and say, aha, we figured it out. You are going to Kentucky. You are going to Alabama. That's not what recruiting is. It's a process, and the process is not over yet. Okay. So I know there's a lot of you that don't want to hear this. And I know, and trust me, it would be in some ways nice to be able to come out and say, all right, well, they gave it their all and it didn't work out. But like I said before, this is kind of like the Jim Harbaugh to Michigan scenario. There's got to be a lot of little things that go right for this to end in the way that Michigan wants it to. Yesterday felt like one of those things was misaligned and it was going to potentially cost. It's what it seemed on the surface. But the more that I've dug into it, the less it seems like that. It actually almost in some ways seems like it's a good thing. The other thing I will add before we move on is the number that is out there is still not accurate. I'm not going to say whether plus or minus the 10.5. It's still not an accurate number. Okay. Based off of what I've heard from 3 different sources on this. So we're just not going to report a number. So that's just where we're at. So let's move on. I'm going to get to some more of your mailbag questions that we didn't get to yesterday. I think it's appropriate to move on in that way and answer more of your questions here in this bye week. So we are going to do that here in just a moment. But before we do, nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. All right, we're going to move on again here in just a moment. But before we do, college football season is making a closing statement. 3 regular season games left. Very exciting, but also sad. The weather has turned, so you need to gear up to make sure that you have the coolest or maybe even the warmest Michigan apparel in the game. You've heard me talking about it for years. You've seen me wearing it frequently, including today, and that's the gear I get from Homefield. Now, Homefield is a premium collegiate apparel company based out of Indianapolis, 10 Indiana, and there is no place I'd rather get my Michigan gear from. With a retro modern style, Homefield scours every school's history, and you can see I'm pointing to my shirt, retro modern. They scour every school's history to find these amazing, unique designs that you're going to love and really stand out. They've just launched some amazing coaches jackets and these heavyweight tees that are absolutely phenomenal. You can still get their Can't Miss Kickoff bundle, which I have as well. It has a long sleeve. It has this shirt that I'm currently wearing. It has a hoodie that I wear constantly. And then you also have these amazing bomber jackets, one of which is this amazing one that I was so happy to see came back in stock, the national championship jacket. The back is the coolest part, honestly. Wish I could show you that. I guess I can kind of spin around, see if you can see it on the camera. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, just in time for the holidays. So go to homefieldapparel.com. Use my code GoBlue24 to get 15% off of your first order. That's homefieldapparel.com. Promo code GoBlue24. Get 15% off of your first order. Homefield Apparel, just the coolest college gear anywhere. All right, let's get to some of the questions that were asked for the next 2 segments. Because there's a lot that we weren't able to get to, and we've already spent quite a lot of time here on Bryce Underwood. So like I said, we had 63 questions, and I only answered like 27 of them. So let's start with Tim at Tim1988-456. Actually, I did you yesterday. Never mind. I don't know what I didn't leave off there. I know I did that one. Let's see. DE Wolverine at KMoss_11. Let's do that one. We're just going right off of Twitter here instead of being in my little curated spreadsheet. If there was a choice, who would you replace for next year? The offensive coordinator or the offensive line coach? One must go, and that's not hypothetical. I think offensive coordinator. Now, listen, I'm not like I've said a million times. I'm not in the business of calling for someone's job, but there's just no feasible way as the number 130 team in the country from an offensive standpoint out of 134 teams. There's just, you just cannot be in that position if you're Michigan. Because you're Michigan, okay? You've got talent. And even if it's like, okay, there's a lot of new pieces, a lot of guys that don't have experience, you're still Michigan. So again, looking at Michigan, 130th. The teams that are below Michigan, here's the good news. Northwestern's 131. Florida State, Kennesaw State, Kent State. You're in those, that's the company you keep. Number 127 is Houston. I remember watching Houston against Oklahoma and being envious of their offense. Other teams ranked ahead of Michigan include UMass. So just bring in Don Brown. Let him be the dude, right? Other schools that are in the Sam Houston State has a better offense than Michigan. Georgia Southern, I mean, they tend to have a decent offense. Nevada, Bowling Green, Rutgers is significantly better, 50 points higher, essentially, or 60 points higher. in terms of place. Tulsa has a better offense than Michigan. In terms of passing offense, this is also not fun to see. Also 130th. Two of the teams below Michigan are service academies, and Navy's just slightly ahead of Michigan. Iowa has a better passing offense than Michigan. New Mexico State has a worse one. The only good news is when you see teams like Kentucky hovering around Michigan's spot, Purdue, Northwestern, Florida State hovering around Michigan's spot. But there's so many other teams that have much better passing attacks than what Michigan has. And even the rushing offense, it's abysmal. They're not near the bottom necessarily. Michigan's not, but it's not where it has been from a historical standpoint. Michigan is somewhat middling, I believe. I'm trying to see if I can find it here. 70th. So a little worse than middling. But nonetheless, to me, just the play calling and all of it, to me, you cannot keep the Kirk Campbell experiment going. No, I mean, no offense to you, Kirk. You know where you're failing, but it is what it is. Anthony D. Tomlinson at @Banks_design. Will Michigan give Jaden Davis a chance of the season? I mean, I think if there's a game that you can, it's probably Northwestern. But against Ohio State, I mean, probably not. You know, like, you just have to go with kind of who brought you to the dance at that point. Otherwise, you don't have a shot. I'm not saying that they have a good shot to beat Ohio State, but you got to give yourself a chance one way or the other, even if you think like, it doesn't look very good for us. You've got to be able to give yourself a chance. And going with a first-year player who hasn't played at all, I mean, I guess like the hope would be that you blow Northwestern out and get him in. Thus, preserving the red shirt's still there. But I mean, it just feels really unlikely that he's going to get that opportunity. Mr. Go-Getter at Mr. Go-Getter74, could we possibly add another 5-star offensive tackle if Underwood commits? I don't know that there is one out there, right? So it's kind of like the same thing when people are like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. Well, part of it is you got to look at who's available. Like, the Michigan's got to go out and get a quarterback from the portal in the spring. Well, who's out there? That's kind of the biggest part, right? It isn't just saying, you need a quarterback. You actually have to have someone else who is available. And when I'm looking at 24/7 Sports rankings. There's David Sanders at Tennessee. He was kind of an NIL deal over there. He is a teammate of Jaden Davis. I don't think that getting Bryce Underwood is suddenly going to make one of Jaden Davis's former high school teammates say, yeah, you know what? Now that you got a different quarterback, I'm down. Then the next highest rated is Babalola, who is in the fold. Michael Fasusi is going to Oklahoma. He had some interest in Michigan. I think it's a little too late to get into the game. You're kind of hoping that any of them would be like at LSU if that's the case. Lamont Rogers is going to Mizzou. Mizzou's pretty good recruiting under Elia Drinkwitz, and that essentially rounds out the 5 stars. So to answer that, I guess basically no. All right, let's do 2 more, and then we'll go. And then we'll finish up here. Let's see. Wolverine Libertatis, I answered yours on the candidates, even though I now have a couple. I was given 2 names. Unfortunately, I'm not going to give those to you. Yes, I am teasing you. We'll get to those eventually. Mike Matthews at Michigan Mike 7. If Kirk Campbell is let go at the end of the season, how much will it affect Brady Hart's commitment? In some of Hart's commitment interviews, he said that Campbell is one of the reasons he committed. I'm sure that whatever Michigan goes to, it's kind of like when Michigan moved. I'm trying to remember here. I mean, it's kind of like, J.J. McCarthy was already there. Josh Gaddis was there. And then when they move off of Josh Gaddis, even though J.J.'s going into year 2, he's happy with Sharon Moore, right? That's just kind of how it works sometimes. I don't think it's necessarily going to have like a drastic effect. Brady Hart has eyes. He can see what the product on the field is. Relationships only get you so far, but you also have to be able to execute, right? That's part of it. All right, let's do one more, and then we'll move on to more of your questions here. Let's go. Again, I'm just struggling to remember what I did and didn't answer yesterday. Grant Bambino X at Colossus O'Cloud X listened to today's and caught something you said. He's talking about Wednesday. Will Johnson's working through an injury and doesn't tend to come back, hoping to play versus Ohio State. Is there word that he won't play versus Northwestern then, or am I reading too much into your wording? Love listening to your pod. I appreciate it. You're reading too much into it because they're not even on to Northwestern week, right? So we'll kind of reassess where Will Johnson is. But the goal is for him to be back for the game, because that's kind of the goal of anyone who loves college football and plays for one of those two schools. But Northwestern week, I mean, I would imagine if he's healthy, he'll go. Kind of like what Colston Loveland said, if we're healthy, we're playing. That's just kind of what it is. So we will see. Anyway, we're going to continue on. I've got plenty more. I'm not sure how many I haven't answered. So let's get to as many as I can out of yours so that we can make up for not being able to include them all in the actual mailbag. So we will get to that, excuse me, here in just a moment. But before we do, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports. Dying all of a sudden. Let's try that again. Just get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. All right, we're going to do it one more time. No, because right now, new customers, you can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page. Where you place your bets, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You can start with $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I am having a great time still with the coughs. Got the voice fully back. Feel, I would say 98% generally better, but like today's kind of a setback day a little bit, and that's, I think, in large part because I've been trying to work out. I gained 15 pounds while being sick. Make that make sense. And it wasn't like I was like, well, since I'm sick, I'm just going to eat a bunch of cake. I mean, I had cake on my birthday, but that was it. Otherwise, I ate pretty good, and it's just still gained 15 pounds. So I think the working out is just causing my body to rebel a little bit. Hence, you're getting a little bit of coughing. Certainly my lungs are, but due to the cardio. All right, let's get to more of your questions to finish out here. Lord Farfetch at Fraser Burton 3. Bro, your score predictions have been on point. Thanks. I tried. I was actually pretty far off on Indiana. I predicted Indiana was going to win by a much bigger margin, but I also, noted that Michigan's defense was better than what Indiana had faced, and we saw that. Another one from Great Bambino X, Classes of Cloud X. If we miss on Underwood, what are some names to keep an eye on in the 25 class? Ideally, we take a recruit and a transfer, right? Is Malik Washington a realistic fallback, or will we relegated to lower-rated guys? Any chance we could get Carter Smith to recommit? I think Carter Smith, that ship sailed. Malik Washington is the name I would look at. Also, the Cal commit, whose name escapes me, would be one that I think Michigan could get into, but it's got to do it soon. I think he visited or is visiting Oregon. His star is kind of rising. That's a credit to Devin Gardner for pointing that out. All right, Jacob Phillips at Jake_Phillips8. Was Sherrone Moore left in a position to succeed with how Harbaugh and company left? No, absolutely not. And I know you can sit there and say, well, yeah, that happens. Coaches go to the NFL and yada, yada, yada. I mean, Urban was kind of out much earlier. Obviously, he announced to the team he was leaving before the Michigan game in 2018. That gave them a lot more time to get some stability. Sherrone Moore, not only not having stability, but it was like weeks later. I mean, I was in Florida writing articles about Wink Martindale signing on, but Steve Clinkscale, after saying he was staying, ended up being wooed. Mike Elston being wooed, having to replace Greg Smith during spring ball. All these kinds of things. And it's one thing if it's Jim Harbaugh going through that. It's another if it's a first-year head coach trying to navigate those waters. Having the personnel losses, one of the most inexperienced teams in the country, mixed with a brand-new coaching staff, I think that it was going to be an uphill battle. I still thought that Michigan, again, mea culpa, thought Michigan was going to be in a better spot kind of regardless because of some of the veterans they had and Wink Martindale and all of that and these types of things. And it just kind of hasn't worked out. Now, it's been closer in a lot of ways, right? Like football is a very fickle game. And sometimes with what looks like a devastating loss really is, not to do the Ohio State 5 plays thing, but sometimes that's the case. Michigan was doing the same thing after the 2018 Ohio State game, by the way, as Ohio State and coming out of the 2022 game. Michigan was doing it behind closed doors compared to publicly. So yeah. Mindy at Wolverine Min, any update on Rod Moore? I thought there was a long shot possibility he might be back for OSU. Will he come back next year? I know he had a little bit of a setback. I don't know what that means for the next couple weeks or not. I would venture to guess that it's unlikely. And I'd venture to guess he probably has to come back next year if he wants to really maximize his draft potential. Andy Dufresne at Shawshank_AD. I like that. Who has fallen up the most in college football coaching, and why is it Kirk Campbell? I mean, can't fully disagree with you on that, unfortunately. Listen, I shouldn't say that. I mean, he's done some good things. It's just as a complete situation, and it would be better if if he took over last year's offense, right? Like he was the offensive coordinator in game one. Wasn't bad. I didn't love the play calling in that game. I remember discussing that. But he also was kind of dealt a bad hand, but he's not adept enough to be able to handle the bad hand that he's been dealt. Okay? And with the inexperience, I mean, that's one thing. It's just, to me, that's the lack of identity, the lack of obvious philosophy. Those are some issues. Chubbs GB at Talk with Chubbs. Are they still doing the beat Ohio and Georgia drills? To my knowledge, they are. But we haven't talked about it because it's kind of not something to constantly ask, I guess. EH Scooter at EH Scooter 11. How much self-scouting is going on? They failed this team. This year's D-line with Will Johnson don't come around every year. Can we scrap the orgy run as well? Good athlete with zero running awareness. Listen, the orgy run has kind of helped you. They don't beat Michigan State without the orgy run, number one. They just got to be smart about how they deploy it. The self-scout, I don't feel like they're that good at it, to be honest, as a team. And that's not just on Underwood. That's on Campbell. That's on a bunch of people there. Christian at Great White 85. Who starts at QB next year? Someone that's not on the roster. Michigan primetime at U of M primetime. What MAC team are you hoping we draw in the bowl game, assuming we beat Northwestern? They might not get a MAC team. I mean, they might, but if they go with the Motor City Bowl, it's a possibility. Music City Bowl, I think, is probably a little bit more likely. I'd like the Motor City Bowl. Why? Because then I don't have to hire a dog sitter, and I don't have to rent a hotel room. If they're gonna go to then again, I've seen some say like they could play in the Music City Bowl against LSU. That would be pretty cool. Even though LSU is probably a much better team, Michigan's never played LSU, so in a way, I'm rooting for that. Caden Scripp at Caden Scripp. If Underwood still isn't here with the $10 million on the table, does he even want to be here? At what point do we even want him, or would the money be better spent on players who want to be at Michigan? Number one, okay, here's the thing about money. It's not like the $10 million just comes out of nowhere. It's come with a purpose. And when you're trying to get, as someone has told me, the LeBron James of football, that's going to perk people's ears up to say, I want to donate money to make that happen. The quarterback position, all that. Like, you're not just going to be like, okay, you can't get Bryce Underwood. Let's go get 4 linemen and a tight end, right? Like, it doesn't work that way. The investment is because of the man that they're trying to invest in. And whether or not he wants to play at Michigan or LSU, I mean, he has interest in Michigan. I'm not saying he doesn't. It's just that LSU is the dream school. It's, I think that it just get him signed, get him on campus. Michigan's a special place. Not every time has everyone ever come to Michigan been all in for Michigan. Okay. And some of them end up being like some of your favorites. I can't name names right now because I can't think of any, but I know that I've had those conversations before, and a lot of times it's like people come around, right? So I think that's a kind of a coping mechanism to kind of be like, well, if he doesn't want to be here, why do you want him? Last question, super fast because we're running out of time. Tiger 1987, what transfer QB will they go after? Again, we don't really know, but I would keep my eyes on Miller Moss. That's where I would keep my eyes, personally. All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. There's no games to react to, so there we go. Let's talk Northwestern next week. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you later. Peace.